Red Lobster has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and more restaurant closures are on the way. I say more restaurant closures because earlier this year, they actually ended up shutting down as many as 90 of their restaurants. And now this Chapter 11 bankruptcy makes clear that they're going to close more of them. Now, experts argue that the chain's $20 endless shrimp deal, which used to be a limited time offer, but they made it permanent, led to the demise of the food chain. But that's actually not the case. It's one factor that led to its demise, but the real story is actually a lot more complicated. So buckle up as I walk you through what really happened. So look, business actually began to slip for chain restaurants at a time when the price of seafood skyrocketed. And that was not good news for Red Lobster, a seafood restaurant, and also a chain restaurant. So casual dining has slipped from 36% of total restaurant industry sales in 2013 to 31% in 2023. And that's according to Technomike, a restaurant research firm. Now, back in 2014, Darden Restaurants ended up selling Red Lobster to a private equity firm, specifically due to the fact that the price of seafood was rising and the business wasn't as profitable given the business model of seafood. So they sold it to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital for $2.1 billion. Here's more information about seafood prices and how it impacted Red Lobster back in 2013-2014.
Shrimp prices began to spike in 2013. That year, Red Lobster's revenue plummeted in comparison to another Darden brand, Olive Garden. The next year, Darden sold Red Lobster for $2.1 billion to a private equity firm. As part of the deal, all of Red Lobster's real estate, which it had acquired since the late 1960s, was sold and leased back to the company to fund the total price.
Restaurant leasebacks can be kind of common in restaurants. It's something other chains do. The positive is you get a whole chunk of capital way up front. But the negative is there can be consequences down the chain.
So those property leasebacks, super important to the story, and we're going to come right back to it. But in 2020, due to the financial pressures that were brought forward by the coronavirus pandemic, the private equity firm Golden Gate sold its remaining stake to a Thai company known as Thai Union Group. Now, keep in mind that Thai Union Group was also a supplier of seafood to Red Lobster, and they did something kind of shady. So in January, when Thai Union Group announced it was seeking to unload its ownership share in Red Lobster, it cited a combination of the COVID-19 pandemic, sustained industry headwinds, higher interest rates, and rising material and labor costs. And here is where things start to get pretty interesting. Rental leases for its restaurants have proven to be a particular burden. In bankruptcy filings on Monday, the company said that it was seeking to reject unexpired leases and abandon any personal property remaining at leased premises on an emergency basis to avoid incurring post-petition administrative rent. So understand that when the private equity firm bought Red Lobster back in 2014, it sold the land that Red Lobster restaurants were situated on and then leased the land back to Red Lobster, and that ended up being a pretty big financial burden for Red Lobster, right? At a time when seafood prices were also increasing, at a time when people were less interested in eating at chain restaurants. And all of this stuff kind of started to work together to lead to the demise of Red Lobster. And so here's a few more details on that, and then I want to get into specifically how Thai Union Group screwed Red Lobster over. Let's watch.
Interest rates rose, which drove up the price of its leases.
You're not in control of your destiny in the same way as you are when you own all the restaurants. There's a chance that you're going to have to amend your terms. The prices can fluctuate, and suddenly you're paying a lot more for your real estate than you did.
To combat these losses, Red Lobster needed a hit. In June 2023, the company took a big swing.
Ultimate Endless Shrimp is here with a limited time
The dragon shrimp flavor drop was limited time, but endless shrimp at a low price was now a year-round deal.
So the whole point of making the $20 endless shrimp permanent was to bring in more foot traffic. The problem is it worked out a little too well for them and they ended up losing a lot of money. The point of that deal wasn't to increase profits. It was to increase the amount of people who were willing to eat at their restaurants. But people would show up specifically for the endless shrimp deal and they weren't making profits in other areas selling other entree items and things like that. So by the third quarter of 2023, Red Lobster recorded an $11 million operating loss. They had a $2 million operating loss the previous quarter, and that was before they had implemented this endless shrimp option. But there's one other thing that I have to tell you guys about, and this is the foible, the big mistake that Thai Union Group did. Because what they ended up doing is, since they're also a supplier of seafood, they wanted to be the only supplier of seafood for Red Lobster, which allowed for them to essentially monopolize the supply chain to Red Lobster and essentially hike up the prices of already expensive seafood. Under a CEO appointed at the direction of Thai Union, Red Lobster eliminated 2 of its breaded shrimp suppliers, leaving Thai Union with an exclusive deal to provide shrimp for the chain, the filing said. That led to higher costs, and it did not comply with the company's typical decision-making process for picking suppliers based on projected demand, according to the chain's filing. So there was a lot of bad behavior all around as this business was sold to one party and then to another party. All these parties were looking for ways to maximize their own profits to the detriment of Red Lobster as a business.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who can make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's going to make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you. Thank you.
So first of all, let me be clear. It's not because of the all-you-can-eat shrimp that Red Lobster went down. So they said that cost them $11 million. In the scope of the entire Red Lobster business, that's close to nothing. That's not a big deal. So Thai Union trying to get synergies by having them buy all the shrimp from Thai Union, I get it. That's like the most common thing to do in business. That probably was a bigger factor, but all of these pale in comparison to the sale leaseback. So this is a common thing that private equity does, and now every situation is slightly different, but what they do a lot of times is they will take money off the top of the deal in some way, in this case, by selling the properties that Red Lobster has. And then, in this case, I don't know where that vat of money went. Was it to pay down debt, or did the private equity guys just take it off the table, right? That means put it in their pocket. Because once they do that, that's a very normal private equity standard. And so once they do that, they think, well, I already made money from this deal, so I don't even care if Red Lobster goes bankrupt. As an example, we've shown you other cases where they for sure took the money and put it in their pocket, right? In this case, I'm not clear, but it is a common practice. But no matter where the money went, the minute they did the sale leaseback, Red Lobster was done. The rest was just history playing out, right? Because that increases your costs so much if you have to pay rent on top of all of your other costs. And the minute you hit any kind of cycle where interest rates go up and your rent goes up substantially, you're done for. You have no chance of surviving. And what it does is it leads to a vicious cycle, because since your costs are so much higher now, you try to cut costs, which is what these guys did. And when they tried to cut costs, what do? They lowered the number of people working in the Red Lobsters. So that's why they're talking about, oh my God, we had too much labor costs. No, they used to have waiters and waitresses work 3 tables at once. They then made them work 10 tables at once. But then what happens at that point? Quality starts to go down and everybody gets frustrated, and then people come back less. And oftentimes in other stories I've read too, when this happens, like at Kmart and Sears, the stores just started getting dirtier and dirtier because they're cutting costs everywhere. They're not even cleaning the place. And then people don't want to go anymore. And it was all because they took the money off the top and doomed the business from day one.
Exactly right. So think about it. So Thai Union Group appoints like this CEO who's like, I think we should get all of our seafood from Thai Union Group. decided to make the dining experience for customers far worse by cutting labor to the point where, the servers went from, having to be responsible for like 3 tables to 10 tables. So then people aren't going to be as interested in going to Red Lobster if they're not having an enjoyable experience, right? So think about what that means. That means that Thai Union Group, to increase their own personal profits as a supplier of seafood, monopolized, being the supplier for Red Lobster specifically. And in order to cut costs, they did away with some of the labor. It's just so gross. And it's just, this is a way of, pillaging a business. And it's really sad to see it because I really like Red Lobster, and I'm sad to see that they're struggling, and they're going to shut down a bunch of stores, a bunch of restaurants. Not all of them. They still want to remain in business, but I feel like the writing's on the wall, Cenk.
Yeah. So I agree with our member Canadian Skull Dragon, who writes in, "We will miss you. Your butterfly shrimp and coconut shrimp was the best." Okay, the only part I disagree with is those were fantastic, but the cheese bread. I mean, it was God's gift to America. Red Lobster was part of Americana. That's if I was going to take my girlfriend out when I was totally broke to a fancy dinner, it was at Red Lobster. And so I love Red Lobster. I'm going to panic and go to Red Lobster as often as I can before they shut down. But I tell you, I did mention God there, and to be fair, Anna, we should mention one other possibility. What I've talked about a lot on this show. Is that Leviticus says that shellfish is an abomination just as much as homosexuality is. It's in the Old Testament. Shrimp, lobster, all these things, an abomination. So it's possible God struck down Red Lobster.
Well, you know what, Cenk? I'm ready to be a bad girl. Okay? And enjoy what's left of Red Lobster before its complete demise. Okay?
Here on all of them.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you got to do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.